Hey guys, it's Roscoe, and on the Space Coast today, we're joined by Qui-Gon Jinn and his Padawan Obi-Wan, because I'm going to be reviewing this, Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. It was absolutely fantastic. Just before I get into the plot, what Claudia Gray has been great at ever since Lost Stars is stitching in her narrative that she's telling into the wider canon of Star Wars. We saw that so well in Lost Stars, and we've seen it in Bloodline and Leia, Princess of Alderaan. This is the same. I will say that maybe in the first chapter or two, it's very heavy on the fan service. So there's mention of Hutts, of Hosnian Prime, of Varactals from Utapau, and all sorts of things. So much it's like it's one after another, after another, after another, after another. But I really thoroughly enjoyed that. So, what this is about: on the planet Pijal, there is a young girl who's about to become queen, and she has had a Jedi mentor as regent, is what I'm trying to say, because she's not old enough to take the crown. And basically, she's about to come of age, she's going to become crown, and she's going to sign a governance treaty, which is going to open a hyperspace corridor linking Pijal to the wider galaxy. Corporations are involved, the Republic is involved, so there's a lot of pressure to make sure this goes off without a hitch. But there's problems on Pijal. So Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are sent there to see if they can help resolve the situation. Qui-Gon and the guy who is serving as regent, Rael Averross, they were both Padawans of Count Dooku, which is fascinating. And there are various flashback scenes within the book of when both of them were his Padawan. And it focuses mostly on Dooku's interest in prophecy, and specifically the holocron of prophecies, which both of them, Rael and Qui-Gon, have looked into and found fascinating and very, very tempting, as of course has Dooku. But anyway, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, they arrive at the planet to try and find out what's going on. So basically, the main corporation that's running things on that planet, the Zerka Corporation, they have managed to basically write this governance treaty, guaranteeing them in perpetuity for all eternity the various contracts that they already have. And because Rael, being an off-worlder, didn't understand the actual language, the form of wording that was used, it's something like, as long as the sun guards the moon, that sort of thing, meaning forever. So he didn't pick up on that. And there's a lot of unrest. There are not separatist attacks, but opposition attacks. And the group that is called the Opposition is actually a bunch of performance artists. So it's performance art attack, as it were. So they're trying to find out who's trying to undermine this upcoming coronation of Princess family into Queen family. And I think it is this Opposition. But there's other groups seemingly attacking as well that isn't the Opposition. And they're basically getting blamed, and they're not happy about that. And there's a lot of unrest on Pijal's moon as well, because in this governance treaty, they're going to get a very small bit of representation compared to what proportion of the population they actually form of the two worlds. So lots of problems there. So basically, the Opposition say, look, it's not us. I swear, we are not doing these things. We release balloons and that sort of thing, so to make their point. But there are more serious attacks on the palace and all of that, which is very, very worrying for this upcoming coronation ceremony. When they're on that moon, they stumble across what is called... There's two jewel thieves who are like the B-plot characters, who are not force sensitive, they're just jewel thieves. A man and a woman. She's a former slave of the Zerka Corporation, but managed to escape, and he is the jewel thief. And they're trying to find basically enough jewels to just sell and live a life of luxury. I mentioned in the first look that there's things like, say, Alderanian coral or gravel that, say, to Rhodians is like shimmers like diamonds. So it's like Mustafar fire diamonds and all that sort of thing in there. But this colon, they thought it was Kyber, but it's very similar to Kyber crystals. Only a Jedi would know the difference, so anyone they're selling it to who's not a Jedi would be fooled and think that they are actual Kyber crystals, but they're not. They do have an interesting property though. These colon crystals, they are used by this Blackguard is what they're called, group, to form shields, and it protects against lightsabers. So it's like a lightsaber shield. So that's an interesting concept. But you can also insert a colon crystal into a lightsaber, and it will produce an orange blade, but it won't be anywhere near as strong as a lightsaber. It will cut through those colon shields, but it wouldn't cut through a person. It would be more like an actual sword and just like stabbing them or slicing them. So that's fascinating little detail there as well. And while all that is going on, trying to figure out what's going on this planet, who is responsible for all of these attacks, can they make sure that the ceremony goes ahead and the hyperspace corridor is open, there are these flashbacks to both Rael with Dooku and also Qui-Gon with Dooku, especially about this holocron of prophecy. And there are many prophecies mentioned. Obviously, the Chosen One prophecy is in there, and that is the one that really intrigues the main characters, Dooku and Qui-Gon and Rael. But the other ones are very interesting because Qui-Gon has Obi-Wan researching some of these. And there's this one, it's like, she who was born to darkness will give birth to darkness. For me, that's clearly a reference to Leia, who obviously does not exist at this time. Then there's another interesting one, it's like, when the Kyber that is not Kyber shines forth, then the time of prophecy will be at hand. The Kyber that is not Kyber is the colon crystal. So Qui-Gon now realises the time of prophecy is at hand, as these colon crystals have now shone forth, as it were. And of course there is the Chosen One prophecy as well, which Obi-Wan thinks is ridiculous. But it's very enjoyable. So towards the end, when they're trying to figure out what is going on, it turns out it is Fanry is behind the attacks with the head of her royal guard, because she has seen over the centuries how the monarchs of her world have basically slowly lost all power. Although in name only they have power, but none of them have exercised it. She's determined to exercise her full authority the moment that she becomes queen. So she is behind all of the attacks on herself to try and divert attention away from the fact that it's her, but also to build support for the fact that things must change, we must take a firm hand, which is very interesting as well, and which I did thoroughly enjoy. Of course, that means that she wants to usurp Circa Corporation, usurp her regent Rael and everything. Think female Joffrey, but maybe not as vicious. So it's very much like that. So they've then got to fight against her, and Obi-Wan has to rescue slaves at the same time. We find out why Obi-Wan hates flying. He is trying to rescue, or he is in a little ship. Think the Eta Interceptor, you know, like the Jedi TIE Fighter. He's in something that's about that size, that is inside another craft, so it's docked inside its main ship, but that ship is docked inside this slave ship. So he drops the ship out of its bay into the main hangar bays, firing all these droids, and then this autopilot routine kicks on, and it starts flying through the corridors of the ship. And prior to this, Obi-Wan had loved flying. This is the incident that makes him hate it, because he's got to basically fly down these narrow corridors with maybe a metre to spare on either side at most. So that was really good. But yes, fantastic story. I loved the bits with Dooku and with both Qui-Gon and Rael with him, and we can see Dooku being tempted by the dark side. And at the not quite the very end of the book, but say the penultimate chapter, Dooku contacts Rael in the aftermath of everything that's happened on Pijal, and offers for him to come to Sereno, say, "You will learn, you'll gain great power," you know, all that sort of thing. And he basically says no, and it's this quote that's actually from the back about seeking the light, and it's like, I don't turn towards the light because it means someday I'll win some cosmic game, say against the darkness or whatever. I turn towards it because it is the light, you know. He serves the light, he's not interested in the darkness. So obviously Dooku's not happy about that. This is about 8 years before the Phantom Menace, so about 18 years before Attack of the Clones. So I think Dooku is already on the path to the dark side. He has left the Jedi Order by this point, and starting that slope towards being Darth Tyrannus. The very last chapter is a flash forward from this point, and it's Qui-Gon's funeral, just before Qui-Gon's funeral, where Amidala comes into like the, what would you call it? You know, where the body will be the viewing area, so he can spend a moment alone with him. And he's thinking back to this Chosen One prophecy and how Qui-Gon thought it related to this young slave boy from Tatooine, Anakin Skywalker. And it ends with him saying, like, I choose to believe, you know, that he is the Chosen One, basically. But yes, fantastic book. Absolutely loved it. Great to see more prequel era content. Like I said, it is full of fan service references, tying it into the kind of Hosnian Prime gets mentioned, for instance, because the Zerka Corporation slaves that it owns are known as sentient property. And the lady who's the jewel thief, she's from Hosnian Prime, I think, and she was a slave there. But yes, fantastic, so much in there, absolutely loved it. And the stuff about the prophecies was really intriguing, and I suspect some of them might have been planted in there for future reference for other things that are upcoming. But as for that, we'll just have to wait and see. But for now, guys, that's just my review of Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. Like Timothy Zahn, she never disappoints. I can't wait for her next book. Whatever that might be, I thoroughly recommend this one. Please subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this content. Leave me a comment or suggestion for upcoming topic you'd like to see discussed. Or like the video.